Have Monster Hunter World, which has been received incredibly well. Welcome to Hubworld, the podcast about video games, pop culture, and the new best Disney princess, Princess Shuri of Wakanda.
Oh, that is so right. Oh, man. Hey, welcome back to Wakanda, Carter. Did you enjoy your trip as much as I did?
Wakanda forever.
Wakanda forever. I'm doing the thing.
I don't know if you heard that, but that was the sound of me crossing my arms and banging them against my chest.
I did hear it, and that was
Okay,
much
good.
better than mine. I crossed my arms, but I didn't make the noise. I actually just did it again.
Anyways, welcome to Wakanda.
Yeah, welcome to Wakanda World, a podcast about Wakanda.
A podcast about fantastical advances in technology.
Yeah, which is exactly what we talk about each and every single day. Oh boy, we both saw Black Panther, and we will be getting into that later in this episode because that is a fantastic movie and it has there's a lot to talk about with it.
Honestly, I could probably start a podcast called Wakanda World and have plenty to talk about.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, so if you haven't seen Black Panther before you listen to this, first of all, stop listening to this and go watch Black Panther.
Well, listen to the first half and then go watch Black Panther and then come back and listen to the second half.
Yeah, and even if you want to, you can listen to this first half while you're in the previews because whatever.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you can watch the movie and then you can hit play and resume where you were in the podcast, in which is the part where we record it.
Right. And then you're going to want to go to a second screening, probably.
Yeah, definitely. I saw it at 10:15 on a Friday morning.
Oh, wow.
And the movie theater was one of those where they have the reclining chairs. And
Oh, I had one of those too.
oh boy, that was the best way to watch that movie for sure.
Yep.
But also it was almost sold out. There was only 4 seats left at 10:15 on a Friday morning.
Oh my gosh.
And there was a lady that when I was getting my popcorn, shout out to popcorn, the best snack in
Shout
the
out
world.
to butter.
And she was like, "Yeah, I got my tickets 3 months ago." So yeah, it was.
Oh my gosh.
it was pretty cool. But anyway, so
Well,
yeah,
I mean, as we know, it has been smashing some records.
Oh, yeah.
And some office boxes.
yeah, those Office boxes never stood a chance to Black Panther. So yeah, we will be reviewing Black Panther at the latter half of this episode.
Yeah.
And we're really excited to do that. But first, Carter.
You know, Daniel, you may not know this about me, but I actually am something of a scientist.
Oh, I didn't.
Yeah. And so I've been doing a lot of field research on actually video games, which is, very convenient considering this is a video game podcast.
Yes.
And I wanted to let you know on a harrowing discovery that I have made. Basically, I've been cross-referencing every bad video game ever.
Okay.
Every game that's been poorly received, poorly reviewed. And it turns out that...
Did you start with Wolfenstein 2, the new Colossus?
Yes, I worked my way backwards.
Okay.
And it turns out that what's actually making these video games bad is that they're spelled wrong.
Oh, you see, that's a thing that I think developers don't understand is that when you make a game, you have to spell it right.
Yes, and if it weren't for the Hubworld detectives who have cracked this case wide open and found out that all it takes is one letter.
All it takes is one letter. I mean, whether it's the addition of that letter, whether it's the removal of that letter, or whether it's the change of that letter, spelling matters, everyone.
Yes, or misspelling, I guess, in this case. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, this obviously marks the triumphant return to, as you put it once, Hubworld exclusive.
Yeah.
Yes, our favorite little game, Letter. I barely know her.
Yeah. the triumphant return. And I was so hyped at the fact that I forgot that we called this by that name last episode that I was like, oh yeah, but I forgot that we actually called it that in episode 1. So go back and recall that if you need to have some context about this.
Yeah, but what I'm even more excited for this episode is that we've got a big ol' handful of listener suggestions.
Yeah, we totally do. I made a call on Twitter. Follow us at Hubworldcast and
www.twitter.com.
Yeah, and I asked for suggestions for Letter I Barely Know Her, and we have a lot of those to offer, as well as some of our own that we have concocted with our human brains.
Yes.
And so let's just go ahead and get right into it because we need to develop some games. We need to help some of these developers out in order to help their games reach their highest potential.
We need to right some wrongs.
Yeah. So Carter, since you've been doing this field research and getting your hands and feet dirty, tell us one of your research findings.
All right. The first, this is the first case that really, got me thinking. Now, I understand that you've been playing some phone games recently. Every once in a while I'll pick up a nice little iOS game.
Yeah.
And so there's a classic game that I feel like could use a little reinvention. And that would be in the form of the newest iPhone game, Angry Bids, the eBay simulator. I don't know how to gamify this exactly.
So here's what I think is that I think that part of Angry Bids is that it's going to have an extensive character creation suite.
Okay.
Because you need to create
of like your online persona.
Yeah, exactly. You got to create a bidder. Everyone needs,
right.
I mean, like when you think about eBay and you search that giant web site known as eBay and you try to see all these things for sale, and like so much part of the eBay experience is the seller barely even know her. And so you have to, at this point, create a seller persona. So like, you could have, hey, I'm Todd Jones. I'm from Texas. And everything I sell is humongous and unnecessary. And so I think that's going to be like a big time part of the experience of this game, certainly.
Right.
Then I guess the angry portion, I guess that's sort of the I guess you could take angry in multiple ways. You can take angry as mad, says I'm Todd Jones and I'm angry. Every single thing I have is huge and unnecessary, but dadgummit, you better buy it because it's the best.
It's actually the seller that's angry. It's not the people bidding.
Yeah, exactly. So you could take it that route.
Makes sense.
Or you could just have it as like, like I am just bidding on everything, like I have 3,000 bids in the last.
Getting in bid wars with other bidders.
Yeah. And so then you have, like PvP bidding action, where you're trying to outbid a player in real time. And that's when the anger begins.
Right. That's where the angry bids come in.
Is this going to be, to me, this sounds sort of like a simulation action hybrid title.
Oh,
because
yeah.
I imagine
it's like an online brawler.
Yeah. So like, I'm sure that the interface is like straight up eBay. Like we're going to have eBay partnership on this. This is going to be eBay's first sponsored video game.
See, I didn't clarify, but it's the game. It's actually eBay.
Oh yeah. So yeah. eBay.
It's just like you purchase the game and then you get the download code, and the download code is www.ebay.com.
Yeah, and so it's almost like an ARG, I guess. At that point, it's an alternate reality game
interface. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So at that point, we could probably cut costs because then it's not like a distribution thing. It's literally just go to eBay.
Right. Yep.
Oh man. And then then the creative persona is almost like a tabletop situation where like, if you're playing a tabletop RPG and you create a character, you're just doing that in your mind. And so it's again, we can save money on graphics. We can save money on programming. We can save so much money making this because it's just eBay. And then
it's just also repackaging and reselling.
Yeah. And then recontextualizing the eBay experience.
Exactly.
I love it. I love this. I'm so sold.
Coming soon to the internet.
Yeah.
Angry Bids, the eBay simulator.
eBay : Angry Bids. See ya on the internet. Oh man, that's wonderful. Well, okay. So in the interest of research, of field research, as we think about this, one of the biggest games of 2018, honestly, this is taken the zeitgeist by storm. is a game called Fortnite.
True.
And I mean, I think a lot of we've thought our thoughts about them, and then we've also
yes
communicated those thoughts to the world.
We actually have a podcast
we do called Hubworld, where
yep.
we have discussed our thoughts on Fortnite, and I think both of us were kind of like middle ground on
right.
it, and kind of like whatever. I think we both thought that like this could be improved in a lot of ways. Honestly, if the game was called Fart Night, I think it would be a better game.
Daniel, I don't know why I didn't see that coming, honestly. I don't know what I expected. Oh, gosh. That's fantastic.
Like, there's already a circle that, encloses in, right? Because there's this quote-unquote storm. We don't know what the storm is. We don't know where the storm came from. But what if we did? What if we did know what the storm was? What if we did know why people were trying to build buildings out of random sticks to go higher in the ground and shoot people? Is because the storm was fart clouds, and they could not bear it. What if we didn't know where we didn't know why you just got knocked out by the storm? What if we did know because it's fart clouds and you couldn't run because it smelled so bad?
And now you have this rich backstory that totally adds a whole other dimension to the game.
A literal backstory, because the story is coming out of a butt.
Oh, wow.
That's why I think it would heighten the sense of urgency. I think it would heighten the lore of the world. I think it would give you a reason to do what you're doing other than just, I don't know, get loot.
You're so right.
Maybe loot boxes would... I guess there's no loot boxes in Fortnite currently, but if it was called Fart Night, you could have poop boxes, and that would be a bomb you could throw at other players that would instantly kill them. But they were random, they came from out of the sky, and you didn't know where they were going to land. But if you got to it, then you had basically a nuclear bomb. And I think once you start adding nuclear weaponry into a game like Fortnite, that's where things get really interesting, because as you know, nuclear weaponry can reshape an entire global conflict in literally one or two strikes.
That's right.
And so imagine a game like Fortnite, but now you've added a nuclear weapon to it.
As in nuclear farts.
Fart Night.
Daniel, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Is the conversation we just had a new high or a new low?
Well, I think that when you look at life, there's a spectrum, and I think that we covered the entire spectrum.
Sometimes you can be on both sides.
Sometimes you have to cover the entire spectrum in order to have the richest possible conversation.
Gosh. Wow. Well, I'm proud. That's all I know.
Yeah, so
I've never been more proud to be a part of this podcast.
Now that we know that my last idea is one that we can completely just chuck into the ether and never think about it again, what's a new one?
All right. To totally I've actually got a 2-for-1 here. It's one game that can go in two different directions depending on what letter you change, okay?
Oh, yeah, I'm ready.
Now, last episode, we mentioned, threw a little mention to the old GTA, Vice City specifically. Now, I've got two ideas here. The first one is Grand Theft Auto, as in granny or grandma. Where you play as Granny.
Hello, Gran. Nice to meet you.
I guess who's just, really off her rocker this time.
Literally off her rocker because she's in a rocking chair.
I have to mention, just really quickly, I mentioned this idea to my wife, Summer.
What's up?
And when I said Grand Theft Auto, she said, and I quote, she said, "So you're stealing grandmas?"
I don't see a problem here game-wise, because I think that there's been...
See, that's another angle.
I think there's been more heinous crimes committed in video games in the Grand Theft Auto series.
Okay, how about this, Daniel? And stay with me here, okay?
I'm with you.
So we have two options. You're either a grandma that is just wreaking havoc on the city, or you are stealing grandmas, right?
Yes.
What if you are a grandma who is breaking other grandmas out of retirement homes?
Oh my goodness gracious.
So you are stealing other grandmas.
So what we have...
And then it's like a heist basically, but of a retirement home.
Yeah, exactly. So we have elements of the open world Grand Theft Auto.
Correct.
Then we have elements of stealth action games like Metal Gear Solid.
Correct.
And then we have elements of like Shadow of Mordor or whatever the heck the new Lord of the Rings
exactly
games
the
are
direction I
called,
was
where you're
going.
building an army. In this case, of grandmas.
Okay, I did not even think about that. So you've got like the hierarchy of grandmas.
Yeah, and so, yeah. So then instead of the nemesis system, you just have the grandparent system, where you, each time you steal a grandma, there might be a new grandma that comes in your place, and they each have different personality types of their own, and some that may be more feisty than others. This is I think a culmination of so many different leading trends: open world action design,
something for everybody,
stealth action design that was. Also, this is going to be Hideo Kojima presents Grand Theft Auto. I'm just going to go ahead and think that one through because, of course, Hideo will bring his own spin to it and expertise in the stealth action genre.
Right.
And then also the Nemesis system that everybody's always like, I can't believe nobody's used the Nemesis system in any other game. Well, hey, check us out. Now it's a new one, and you're not in Mordor anymore.
Right, you're in Shady Oaks retirement home.
Yeah. Yeah, now you're just busting down the doors and saying, hey, live your life, Grandma.
Oh, I would actually play this.
Oh, I totally would.
The one other thing I was gonna you know how I said there were two directions I could take Grand Theft Auto.
Mm-hmm.
The other one would be Grad Theft Auto.
Oh, now we're really
and so
talking
we're
about-
basically talking like the bully games, except in college.
Yeah.
Or it's just like your typical Grand Theft Auto, except at the end of the game you get robbed of $150,000.
Yeah, both of these close to life. I also the like Bully, I didn't ever beat, but like Bully is like tight. Like that game is very good. And so I a lot of people are calling for a Bully 2. I think like a Bully set in college, I would play that in a heartbeat. I would probably honestly, and I hope that this isn't too sacrilegious, I would, if somebody put in front of me, if Rockstar came to me and was like, hello, Daniel, would you like to play Red Dead Redemption 2 or Bully 2, college this time?
Grand Theft Auto?
I would play that one. Like I
100% agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, dang. We've stumbled onto something else, huh?
Yeah, no, come on, Rockstar. Just
get with the show, Graham.
Yeah. So can I tell you another one?
Please.
So another game that has been quite the topic of conversation, that has really been a popular game so far, especially for Hubworld, the podcast about video games and pop culture in Letter I Barely Know Her, is a game called Monster Hunter World. And it's a game that I love. But I think sometimes when I come home and it's like it's been a day, it's been a doozy. And I wish sometimes that I could play Monster Punter instead. And I think, kind of like we're already talking about, there's two ways that I see this going. One, I think, is that it's a game just like Monster Hunter, but the only weapons you have are like steel-toed boots of various like configurations, and you keep upgrading your boots because and your gloves, because like the way that you beat these monsters are by punting them as far as you can. And so like the environment design becomes very important, because like if you are just on the flat ground and you're trying to punt, these fights are going to take 50, 55, 60, even to 65 minutes long. But then like if you go to the very top of a nest and you say you punt a T-Rex off of that, and then it has to like ragdoll physics its way down a hill, because we're going to have very extensive ragdoll physics in a game about punting monsters. You better believe.
Duh.
Then that lasts 5 to 10 minutes at that point, and then like you're that much closer to brand new boots. So
brand new T-Rex boots.
That's one direction I think we could take this, and the other direction I think is: are you familiar with the video game series John Madden Football?
I sure am. So
in John Madden Football, typically you play as a various number of players on from the National Football League, which is an American football association. Right. But in Monster Punter, I think what you are doing is, again, extensive character creation suite, but you're just creating the most jacked punter that you possibly can make. And then the entire game, you're just that punter. And so like, You could play it straight. You could do 4 years of college and then however many your whole career of NFL,
Right.
just taking the ball, catching it, and then you drop it and kick it, and then that's it. Or you, because you're a monster punter and you've created your character with monster abilities, you know, you could catch it, and then now all of a sudden vampire bat wings sprout out of your back. And you fly for a touchdown. Or when you catch it and then now you are Dr. Frankenstein and you like kind of morph, you know, like your pads like crush and
like Hulk
you become
style.
Yeah, and now you're 9 feet tall, 450 pounds with super strength, speed, and you can jump. And now everyone's trying to tackle you, and they bounce off in a hilarious fashion.
Right. Now you are a monster punter.
Yeah. So I think that that one would take a lot more like programming ingenuity because we're going to have to account for all these different situations that can happen at any time in real time.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to have to utilize the cloud in some way. Cloud computing, I think, is a thing that people use. And I think that we're going to have to offload a lot of information.
Procedural
to the
generation.
Cloud. Yeah. A roguelike. This is going to be the first roguelike American football game that has ever happened because you never know how it's going to go. So, I mean, really, I think we could maybe even do both of these games, call it Monster Punter. And then we can just split up, like Monster Punter on PC. Oh, if you're playing that on a computer, yeah, you're talking about that game where you punt monsters off of a hill. But if you're playing Monster Punter on, Xbox One and Nintendo Switch, then you're playing the football character creation roguelikes suite game.
What if you're playing football against monsters?
This is the sound of me realizing that you have created gold. And I don't have any words to describe how beautiful it is.
You are both the punter of the team, but also instead of tackling monsters, you punt them.
Wow. I don't understand why we're even doing podcasts anymore. I think at this point we just need to go into game development.
Why aren't we game devs?
Well, we'll see. Maybe we'll get some calls.
I'm just like imagining a visual picture of, in my head of like you playing football with like a bunch of T-Rexes and like.
Yeah. See, like a lot of people criticize NFL this year for various valid and non-valid reasons, but I bet you a lot of people would watch a punter try to go up against a team of D-Rexes. Just saying.
Wow. And then you can craft some football pads with monster skin.
With the monsters that you kill. Yeah. See, now we're here. Now it's a loot. Now it's become a loot game also.
Onto something.
Oh man.
Get on it, Capcom.
Yeah, let's go. Capcom's Monster Punter in 2 different ways, depending on what you're playing on. It's a different game totally. I love it.
And then you can get like a combo package of both games. It's called Monster Punter World.
Get at us, Capcom. We're here. We're ready. That one's we can negotiate a deal for that one. Do you have any more?
I do have a couple. I actually have something a little special that I would love to throw back to our first episode.
Oh my.
This is kind of like a little TBT throwback suggestion. Our first episode, I feel like the pinnacle of that episode was the creation of 2 games that involved pants.
Yes. Oh, yes.
For those of you who don't remember, those games were just Pants.
Yes.
And the sequel, which was Pants versus Zombies.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And basically, Daniel, I just want to go on a limb here. I think we should turn this into a trilogy.
Of course, all the best things in life come in trilogies.
Right, exactly. And the finale of this 3-part act is going to be a Wii exclusive, like the original Wii.
The original Wii, bringing it back. All right.
Yeah. And it's going to be, we all know about Wii Sports that came out with as a launch title for Wii.
Yes.
It's going to be called Wii Shorts.
Wii Shorts? Look at me, Wii Shorts now.
We're going to be releasing and completing our trilogy with Wii Shorts.
Oh, please tell me more about Wii Shorts.
Well, I will tell you, Danny. Would you really like to know?
Yes.
All right, here's the pitch. It's just shorts.
The summer seasonal of Just Pants.
Wii Shorts.
Wii Shorts. Also, I think, you know how they thought they were clever by having like like we, but spelled like, meaning like we, like curse,
Correct.
like WE, but they would spell it like WII.
Like idiots, yes.
Yeah, I think this time we turn the tables and we call this thing We Shorts, WE. We Shorts.
Ooh, dang.
We Shorts. We Shorts.
I love that. And I mean, you could be playing sports in shorts. It's not, it's an option.
See, here's the thing, right? Well, a lot of us, and I think we may even talk about this, like representation, I think matters a lot in media and in games. And I think, so for me, I'm somebody that I wear shorts probably 65% of the year, where I think most people probably wear shorts 35 to 30% of the year. And so I think it's important to have a game that celebrates people who wear shorts. And so I think this is where We Shorts really comes into play here, to celebrate the shorts lifestyle, to say, you know what? Yeah, some of us like have unequal body temperatures. Understand that the top half of your body gets really cold, but the bottom half of your body stays hot. And that's why you got to wear shorts more often than the average person. And to this day, not one video game, not one movie, not one piece of media has ever acknowledged me or anyone that is in the same people group as us as shorts wearers. And so I think this may be an important cultural touchstone for those of us. A celebration of shorts. We Shorts. I'm getting emotional thinking about this as something that is important. I mean, I feel seen. I feel understood by this. And like, I don't even know how it plays. Doesn't matter. I'm buying it because it's We Shorts.
Just Pants versus Zombies, We Shorts.
We Shorts. And I think, usually I'm a sucker for the last part of a trilogy because I like closures and I like when things wrap up all together. And so for the Pants trilogy to wrap up with such an important statement about inclusion and representation, I don't think we could have done any better developing this series of games.
I wholeheartedly agree. God bless shorts.
God bless shorts. I need to, if you're out there and you wear shorts 65 to 70% of the year,
we hear you.
We hear you. We know you. We see you. We thank you. Wow. So I have a lot of Twitter suggestions for this, which I really love. I'm going to just dive deep into some of these.
Cool.
Because they're really good. And a lot of you out there send in multiples. So I'm going to try to hit as many of these as I can. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to hit all of them because there's a lot. But
yeah, we've got round 3 at some point, right?
Yeah. So this may be a little bit more rapid fire in nature, but by golly, thank you so much for responding to this like you did. I'm going to start first with Thomas Waldrop on Twitter. Thank you, Thomas. So he's got the pitcher described as the Witcher, but you kill monsters with your 98 miles per hour fastball.
Oh, wait, this is literally like a sequel to Monster Hunter.
Yeah, it kind of is actually. If we really think about it that way, it's the baseball crossover. But I really enjoy this idea as you're somebody going around. Also, a crossover with Just Pants, where you create custom sweet baseball pants that you're wearing.
Okay.
And you're just rolling around with like a steel orb that you're pitching at 98 miles per hour to kill monsters. And so it's including like this, you know how like in a lot of baseball games or sports games where you have the like 3-tap meter, like you'll hit the button once and it'll go up and then you hit it again to get your power and then you hit it again to get your accuracy. I don't know why more RPG games haven't included that in their fighting styles and their fighting mechanics. So true. So I really think this could hit a lot of different fans of sports games and fans of deep action RPGs can finally have a game to agree on. So that's the picture. I'm really excited for that.
Love that.
Thomas had a few more. He had The Skims, your favorite life simulator, but everything in it is made of low-fat milk.
The Skims.
Yeah,
wow.
Which again, I think this one I think is another like important for representation. Those of us that I don't drink whole milk. I'm so sorry. I think it's gross. I drink skim milk or like 2% at
I
the
can
most.
do 2%.
Yeah. And so I think this is another thing where those kind of groups of people, they don't often feel like they are represented very well in media. And
Right,
so
right.
again, it's not that we're asking to have a game that points out the fact that skim milk, look, it's important. No, like I want, like, it's a regular game. It's The Sims, but like, hey, guess what? Everything is like skim or 2%. Like, you don't have to make a big deal about it. It's just a regular part of life in the game. So I really appreciate the skims a lot. Thomas also brings us, and this one is called Mimecraft.
Mimecraft.
Mimecraft. That's right.
Got it.
He said this one speaks or rather doesn't speak for itself.
Dang, what a zinger.
Yeah, so that's it. Also, Need for Speed Underground, a medieval tunnel-based chariot racing game.
Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. It's Need for Speed.
Need for Speed Underground. It's an entirely underground tunnel-based chariot racing game.
That's fantastic.
That's incredible. There's nothing else you need to say about that. Oh man, that's very, very good. Thomas also blessed us with a couple more. Womb Raider. This is obstetrician Lara Croft delivers newborns in extreme conditions. I think that hits the world spanning adventure of the Tomb Raider games, and also the highly underrepresented baby delivering simulator genre.
Right. The midwife simulator.
Yeah, and don't miss the VR version of this one. Is I think the
I might miss it.
He also hits us with the Oregon Train.
Ooh.
This is a text adventure where you ride a train to Oregon and no one gets dysentery. So it seems like a very peaceful
That's perfect.
situation here.
Love that.
He also brings to the table Mike Tyson's Lunch Out. This is a casual dating simulator where every date is with Mike Tyson. So I think that also has some roguelike elements to it, because like you never know, it's going to have procedurally generated Mike Tyson dates. You never know how they're going to go, but you're always having lunch with Mike Tyson, which I think is pretty good.
I love that.
He's also hits us with, and this one I think also speaks for itself, President Evil. How much crime can you get away with from behind the desk in the Oval Office? I think that one's just a straight up sim at this point. Straight up sim. There's no fantasy at this point. So thank you, Thomas. Right. Thomas said this was some more. You can go follow him on Twitter, and you can go see the replies here. But we got to keep rolling. But Thomas, you're a genius. Thank you so much.
True.
Also, this comes from Nick Giles. Thank you, Nick. Dark Soups. A story about a person fighting evil one soup at a time. And I think this is very good because, sometimes soup is like the ultimate, like if you're feeling bad or if it's cold outside, like you eat soup and it is like, yes, this is comforting. The Dark Souls games are like the least comforting game. And so I think this is like a good way to flip the genre on its head entirely, because you're, at this point, you're just trying to fight.
Are we flipping the Dark Souls genre, or are we flipping the soup genre?
Yes.
Like either we could make Dark Souls more comforting, or we could make soup like more stressful.
I think either way, we're looking at, 500, 600,000 sold in the first week.
You're right.
Speaking of 500 to 600,000 sold in the first week, you're familiar with Street Fighter? Let me tell you about Street Lighter.
Oh,
set in the 1800s, where you have to light street lamps.
Okay. All right.
You ever wondered how, in the 1800s, how did they ever see at night? Now you get to find out.
Answer,
and you get
street
to
lighters.
Be part of the solution. So I'm really excited for that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nick. And then also John Chaco. John is a frequent contributor to Hubworld. Thank you, John. Mario Kart Wii.
Someone had to say it.
Or the way that I read this, Mario Kart Wii.
Is that the sound that he would make?
I think so. Let's go.
Here we go.
Sorry, I made a little stinky in the pants.
Okie dokie.
That's all we need to say about that one.
Love that.
Jordan DeBoard on Twitter. Thank you, Jordan. He sent these in a while back, and he's been patient. Jordan said the Elder Scrolls 5 Skyrim, in which you, an old person, walk slowly around the region, and that's it.
So Skyrim, but much slower and with none of the gameplay.
Yeah, exactly. Did you ever wish that your grand open world RPG was actually just a walking simulator? Now you have it.
You had less to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And then he also brings to the table Final Fantasy, in which you gather a team of heroes, master mighty magics, and call upon the aid of powerful beings to save the world from the greatest threat ever, the patriarchy. So, Final Fantasy. Thank you, Jordan DeBoard. Thank you so much for that. I told you, I promised, I teased the last episode where we were doing a bunch of teasing that there was someone that had given us some ideas. That was Jordan. So thank you for being patient and hanging with us. Thank you, everyone, for sending in those wonderful ideas. I think we have a wealth of options to go forth here at Hubworld Publishing Company.
So
where we
true.
Develop and publish video games. So, hey, Carter.
Hey, Daniel.
Let me just say this. I'm feeling a little jet lag, honestly.
Oh, really?
I'm feeling some jet lag. I've had weird sleep because this past weekend I took a trip to Wakanda.
Oh, yeah. The company, the Hubworld company trip.
Yeah, Hubworld company trip to Wakanda, where it was glorious. And it was wonderful. Black Panther, ladies and gentlemen, is a Marvel movie that is out. And I think this is probably... I guess this is my official way of saying we're about to talk about this extensively. So if you have not seen Black Panther, again, pause the podcast.
Right.
Go watch Black Panther, maybe even watch it again, and then hit resume and discuss with us in your brain as you're listening to a podcast.
Right.
As we talk about Black Panther, because holy moly, there's a lot to talk about with this movie.
Oh my gosh. What Marvel's done it again.
Yeah. Man, where to begin with this? I mean,
gosh.
I guess I'll say this, that like there was so much hype surrounding this movie for various reasons. And of course, a lot of the Marvel movies come in with a lot of hype. I mean, they've been doing this literally for 10 years now.
Yeah.
And basically haven't really missed. I mean, I would say the lowest of the low Marvel movies, I would still say are like solid. Like there's been no like complete failure Marvel movies. And so, but this one has come in with a particular energy around it that I think has just totally delivered.
Yes.
So that's kind of for me. What do you think are some of your initial impressions about this movie?
The first thing I want to talk about personally would be the villain, who was so interesting. I think one of the best Marvel villains in the lot for sure. I guess Killmonger was his villain name. I don't actually remember what the dude's name was. We'll say Killmonger. I think a goal of a lot of movies, especially superhero movies, is this idea that you have to somehow make a villain that the audience, to some extent, either sympathizes with or you kind of understand their motivations. And this movie took that to a whole new level.
Yeah.
To where it wasn't just that, oh, I feel sorry for this villain. It was I did not want him to die.
Yeah.
But two, he was like kind of right in like a lot of his motivations.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just a sense of like, there's the good guys and then there's the bad guy that you can understand. It's actually, in this case, the villain and the good guys were kind of on two opposite sides of a spectrum, or kind of, I guess a better way to say it, were two extremes.
Yeah.
And neither were completely right or wrong,
Yeah.
It was a story about them meeting in the middle. And, obviously the Killmonger's motivation was he was standing up for the oppression of people of color around the world. And he was basically saying that Wakanda had all of these resources that they were not using, and that he wanted to use them to arm oppressed people around the world to basically rise up and take their rightful place. And he was basically a hyperbolic representation of a certain kind of anger that we all should feel, and like that is
Yeah.
very real and very valid. And in the
Yeah.
same way, Wakanda kind of, they had all these resources, but they were being overprotective to a space where they weren't being helpful in ways that they should. And so then they were also learning from the villain in really interesting ways. Anyways, all of that was, it was such a complex way to approach a villain that was so much more than just, you know, make you feel sorry for them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And I think like a lot of the conversation around a lot of the Marvel movies that I tend to agree with is that Marvel movies have a villain problem.
Right.
Like in 10 years of Marvel movies, the only villain that I can think of that I'm like, oh yeah, is like Loki. Like
Yeah,
he's the only
yeah.
one that has like any kind of real arc to him and like
Yep.
any kind of real complexity. Like, and I'm sure I'm probably forgetting one or two that like is
Sure,
close
sure.
to that, but in general, the Marvel villains are like as one note as you possibly can be. Like they
Yeah.
have this evil plan and that's what they want to accomplish, and like that's it. Like no nuance to them,
Right.
like nothing. Like they're literally just an obstacle for like the main characters to overcome.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then in this case, again, like we have a character that you not only like you, when you first see him, he's a child and he's a kid from Oakland, and like, you know, his dad, who has other shades of complexity to him, is like trying to do what he can, but like has become so like, you know, understanding of the desperation that I think a lot of people feel, especially people of color, might feel from being oppressed by white people, or being oppressed by economic anxieties and realities that they face or they have faced, that like, you know, has turned to violence, right? And like, and which isn't necessarily the Wakandan way, and that gets his dad in trouble.
Right.
But as we're watching, like, we're just realizing this kid has had injustice done upon him from his own people, like from the king of Wakanda. Like the king of Wakanda came in, killed his own brother,
Right.
and then left that kid. Like, it's terrible. And like, that's something that is acknowledged as being terrible. It's not something that, you know, is made any excuses for. And like, this is
Right.
And we see the product of how like that amongst other, that kind of was a catalyst for turning Killmonger into who he ended up being. And so, yeah, like we see this, there's a logic into his conclusions that you can follow and you can understand,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that you can like sympathize with, like even if like you're to the point where it's like, oh well, like maybe also we shouldn't use these resources to like end up causing wars around the country and like ending up, you know, with a lot more violence. Like it's still something that you're like, I understand why you are the way that you are, in a way that like no other Marvel movie even comes close to doing, which is just really, really, really fascinating.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously this movie, part of why it has been so popular and been such kind of a movement is because it is kind of unprecedented in its representation of Black people in at least the superhero world or the Marvel world or what have you. And
well, really just in films in general.
In general, for sure. And that has been really fantastic. And then another thing that I have been excited for specifically is how it is also a celebration of African culture, which, you know, hey, if you're listening, this dude was born and raised in Kenya. What up, what up?
Yeah.
So I had that personal connection to it as well. And it was interesting because I was really excited for that. And at the same time, I was kind of having to realize, okay, I am coming into this as somebody who was born and raised in Africa, who has that connection and is really feels connected to the representation of African culture. At the same time, I am a white person who Africa is not part of my heritage or my history necessarily, and especially Africans coming to America. And that is a whole nother world and a whole nother part of both the history of Africa and of the US. And so there were two different things that I was thinking, okay, how do I fit into this? But also, how is this movie going to deal with this? And that's one of the things that really surprised me was how well the movie dealt with it, because it kind of compartmentalized it in a way to where the Wakandans were Africans, you know, living in Africa. And then Killmonger, his story and the supporting characters around him were representing the African American experience, kind of as two different experiences. And so not only did they deal with both of those issues separately, but they also had, the movie was about the meeting of those two things and the reconciliation of those two things in really, really interesting ways. There were some times where there was celebration of African culture, but then there was also a celebration of Blackness and African American culture that were super interesting, and they were colliding in really interesting ways. There were a lot of African themes like traditionalism and even like tribalism and like bloodlines and stuff like that still plagues a lot of African countries in not great ways. Like, even just the idea that their king was crowned based on bloodline and based on something kind of primitive like a challenge of combat.
Right.
That's something that I can only really speak for Kenya, but I know that a lot of the political climate, you basically pledge your support to the candidate who belongs to your tribe or your ethnic group, basically, which, it's not that dissimilar to the US, where you kind of stick to your party lines regardless of a lot of values.
Right.
But that was a really cool theme that I think they dealt with in some really interesting ways. In the African context, again, separate from African American context, but also combining those in really interesting ways.
Yeah, that's super interesting, and I was really excited to kind of hear your thoughts on this for somebody who grew up in the United States,
right?
And knowing that you grew up in Kenya, I was really wondering how that played into your viewing, of this movie. And so, I mean, for me, watching this as someone again who was from the U.S.,
right?
I have no African connection. And also as a white guy, with no, connection to the Black experience at all. I still thought it was really cool trying to see this as for what it was, again, like a celebration of representation that we don't see on this scale.
Right.
To me, I thought it was really cool that, T'Challa, that Black Panther, was kind of three versions of heroes that we see, and have been really popular, but that are all white guys always.
Yeah.
So I think that we see elements of Batman, Captain America, and James Bond all wrapped into one. With this, we see he's got the qualities of Batman in the way that he is, he's got these values that he's holding on to, that he's not really trying to kill unless it's absolutely necessary. He uses his smarts as well as his, physical abilities just as much. And kind of his charm. And then also it's this connection of, Batman is extremely wealthy. T'Challa is the king of Wakanda. So like he is extremely wealthy.
Yes.
Like there's this commonality there, that I think you can kind of see. And then also with Captain America, just the obvious that like, I think their superpowers are the closest aligned,
right?
That like, it's really super strength, super speed, and
vibranium.
In vibranium. Exactly. Which, vibranium, Wakanda is the manufacturer of vibranium, which is what Captain America's shield is made out of. So again, there's those kind of connections as well. And also with Captain America being the symbol of a country, just like how T'Challa is the symbol of Wakanda. Again, it's this kind of connection there between that hero. But then also James Bond, because T'Challa has all of these incredible gadgets that his little sister has created for him, which again, when in this movie in particular, when his sister, again, Princess Shuri, who we we shouted out at the top of this episode,
right,
kind of leads him through her laboratory and shows him all of these gadgets. I got the sense of like, this is like what a Black James Bond could be. And so again, as somebody that my entire life, I have had heroes and characters that look like me, and sound like me, to fill my imagination. Like, it was really awesome. Like, I can't like connect with this at all, but like to see how this can be so many of the characters that I've come to love, for someone else to say, hey, this kind of character now looks like me,
Yeah.
I think can't go understated enough, like, or
Yeah.
overstated enough, like how like really awesome that is. And again, just how easily this film makes that scene. Like
Yeah.
it
Right.
doesn't,
Right.
it's not like it's pointing a finger saying like, hey, look, it's cool
Right.
how finally there's a black superhero. Like it's
Yeah.
not having to do that. Like like he just exists. Like
Yep.
it is just a character. And I think that like that is, I think obviously part of why this movie has had the reception that it has had, other than the fact that like it is also just a fantastic movie on its own merits. But like, again, like we can't talk about this movie without talking about how like important that aspect of it is too.
Yeah. I mean, also along the same lines, there was also really awesome women representation and really strong,
Yes.
awesome women in this movie. From like Lupita Nyong'o's character to his sister to I don't actually remember her name. The one, the other one in the Entourage with the bald head. I don't remember her name.
Oh yeah, I think Denai Gira is her
Yeah,
name
yeah.
in real life. I don't remember her character name.
Yeah. And they, they hit on some really, really amazing themes of, I know you and I have both watched that interview with the director talking about some fight scenes from the movie, but how they were really exploring this conversation about femininity and aggression and strength and beauty and all of those things, which were very like symbolized in very creative ways in the fight scenes, where she was taking off her wig and throwing it in the dude's face, or where Lupita would like take off her high heel and smack a dude in the face or something like that. Like all of the fight choreography was telling a story in a really unique way and like a really powerful way as well.
Yeah, it just the little details that really make this shine. Like, I mean, I was mind blown that there's one particular fight scene where those three characters that we just mentioned, they are wearing colors that they are the only three people in the scene wearing those colors, and it's the colors of the Pan African flag, and like.
So cool.
That like just like blew my mind. Like I would never have known that like if I had not seen that, but like it was just such a cool way. Again, like I mean, I'm such a fan of nuance and subtlety and things like that in movies. Like I hate it when movies or TV, directly point at something to like make sure that you see it, and like this doesn't do that. Which is great. But yeah, the fight scenes and the choreography and the cinematography is unreal. I mean, like,
that's the other thing is even when it's not making a statement necessarily, just the visuals. Like one scene that comes to mind to me is all of the scenes on the waterfall, like where they're having the challenge by combat, and all of the tribes are all on the waterfall. And those fight scenes in the water are so cool and like really gorgeous, but also like really innovative in terms of like fight choreography and stuff like that.
Yeah, and like shot composition and set design. Like, I mean, all of it is good and good even for action movies in general, not even just for Marvel movies. Like it's the action is clear on the screen. Like you can see what's happening. It's choreographed really well. And it's like, again, like there's an inventiveness in the way that these scenes are shot and composed, more than just like, oh, there's two people fighting each other.
Right.
Like, again, we saw this example of like, okay, no, like we see, Lupita Nyong'o take off her high heel and slash a guy across the face, and then like take that person's gun and shoot up to somebody on the balcony, and then the camera moves seamlessly up to the balcony without cutting. And now you're watching as Denai Gira's character is kicking somebody off the wall and swinging her staff around in this really elegant way, and like I mean and then the camera continues to move smoothly through that. It's not the trend that a lot of action movies fall into, where it's a lot of quick cuts back and forth and shaky camera to like
you don't even know what's going on at that point.
Yeah, it's trying to convey this feeling of chaos and action. Like, no, it's the opposite. Like the camera is just a steady eye showing you this incredible action without you trying to like contrive a feeling of action. You just experience it, which is really well done.
Yeah. Oh, so good.
Yeah, it's incredible. The soundtrack is amazing.
Oh, see, yeah, that's another thing that I even forgot to mention was like in the conversation of the relation and the collision between African culture and African American culture. They also did that with the soundtrack. There's like there's this African influence of like African instruments and like a really organic sound, but then that also is both contrasted with and combined with like hip hop, rap, Kendrick Lamar, this really cool combination of these two worlds.
Yeah, and it was kind of like for me as a fan of drums and drumming, and then as a fan, of hip hop beats and like trap hi-hats, like to have that constantly pushing the movie forward, like really gives an extra momentum to the experience as you're watching it. Like, I mean, like my foot was tapping like the entire time I was watching the movie. And the movie's 2 hours long, but like when you have that soundtrack that's carrying it along at that kind of pace, like, it just keeps the momentum up, keeps the energy up, and it keeps you entertained. And oh man, again, yeah, just like little subtle details like that, And again, that's also, it's not just to sound good. It's telling the story. It's contrasting, and it's telling the story of these two culture clashes that are meeting in this movie, and it's telling that musically, which is something that is really, really cool.
Yeah,
I think also one of my favorite parts of this is that it's a story about collective responsibility. It's trying to say, how best are we going to help the world? Is it by holding on to all of our resources? Is it by sharing them and building bridges with the world? Or is it building walls with the world and being isolationist? Or is it using what we have to conquer? And like, I mean, I don't think I need to explain how timely that is in our current climate. And the fact that like that message is wrapped up in such an entertaining comic book presentation. It's incredible, as well as being, again, kind of a movie that explores the themes that we've already talked about, kind of on a completely different cultural level. I mean, it's doing so many things at once, and it's doing them so well. It's hard to even talk about this as like, oh yeah, Black Panther, the comic book movie.
Yeah, like, exactly.
That's kind of doing it a disservice. Totally. At that point.
I also like one thing I think of specifically along the lines of, what we've come to expect from comic book movies, this kind of like in like huge scale, like planetary battle kind of thing. Yeah. What I loved is that even though Wakanda is, an excessively technologically advanced, like kind of utopia, even though that part of it is very like, fictionalized or exaggerated in a really fantastical way, what I loved is that after the lesson had been learned by T'Challa and by, a lot of the Wakandans, the resolution of the movie and of especially T'Challa specifically was kind of small scale. Like after everything that happens, he ends up in, on the basketball court next to that building where a lot went down earlier. And instead of saying, instead of Wakanda coming out in a press conference and saying, we're going to start donating our money to all countries in the world, they say, I'm buying this building and this building and this building, and we're going to start a center. Yeah. And it's something like, I love how everything is brought back to a very centered place that seems realistic and seems doable and seems like something that we can accomplish.
Yeah, that's really true. And that's not something I've necessarily think about or have thought about when I've thought about the movie is how it concludes like that. Yeah, it isn't like the easy way out. And like, I mean, and there's like one of the post-credit scenes refers to this a little bit, but like, the big way to finish the movie, kind of like how Iron Man 1 finished, where he's at a press conference and he's like, oh, by the way, I'm Iron Man,
that was very reminiscent of that.
Yeah, like they could have come out and made this big entrance to, Wakanda is revealed. We're not
Mm-hmm.
just this little, poor farming community that can't offer anything to the world like you think we are. We're actually the most technologically advanced country in the world by
Right.
far, and like, oh, here we are in like this grand scene. Yeah, it doesn't do that. Like I said, it kind of almost starts that in
Right.
one of the post-credit scenes, but
And I
yeah, in
mean, even
reality,
that to me, I don't know if this is necessarily what they were going for, but I also think that scene was kind of symbolic in a way of like this white guy saying, what does your African country have to offer the world? You know what I mean? Like, what do your
mm-hmm.
people have to offer? And he gives this smile, and then it cuts to the credits,
Yeah.
But I mean, that I feel like was a great moment that summed up a lot of other themes of the movie of like the audience is kind of led to respect this African country or these African people because they are so technologically advanced. And it
Mm-hmm.
kind of makes me think how much we prescribe human value based on
Yeah.
technology or based on, material advancement.
Material contribution.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. When Africa has so much to offer the world in a lot of ways that are so much bigger than just that. And I feel like that was what that scene was alluding to that was so awesome.
That is really cool. Yeah. It's kind of this idea of like how, a lot of white people i- in history,
Yeah.
have looked at different people groups in different cultures and have
Right.
said like, like, well, like what can you
Right.
offer
And there was
us?
also the historical, colonialism themes in the movie as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Man. Yeah. Listen, folks, Black Panther's really good. Go
Yeah.
see it. It's good on so many different levels.
Yeah. Such a complex movie.
It really is, and it's so positive, and it's so uplifting, and like,
And I mean, what I also love is that it's difficult when it needs to be. And like when I say difficult, I mean like there are some parts like a lot of the villain's story and especially his death that make you uncomfortable, but in just the right way that like makes you feel for somebody that you might not feel for or understand. But it is done in an uplifting way that is like in a way to encourage and affect change.
yeah, totally. And I mean, I think that I have some like such small nitpicks about it. Like, I mean, I think the final fight has some CGI issues with it, and
You don't like the robot rhinos?
and that's really the only like major thing I can even think of, that I was kind of like, I don't really know.
You can't win them all, I guess.
Yeah, you can't win them all. And like, I'm sure if I went back and watched it again and really thought about it, I could probably pick some things, but like it generally is so good. And I guess if you've made it this far in the podcast, you've probably seen it. And so I don't need to tell you to go see
Yeah.
it. But if you've made it this far in the podcast and you haven't seen it, holy moly.
Yeah.
Go see it and go tell people to go see it. And it's such a good thing.
Amen. Wakanda forever.
Wakanda forever. Also, speaking of good things, as we are closing up another episode of Hubworld, as you've heard, we really love it when you can engage with us and when you help us out by talking with us and contributing even to an episode. And the way that you can do that is by following us on Twitter at HubWorldCast, by liking our Facebook page, Hubworld, by listening to us on SoundCloud, by listening to us on your podcast app. I think Apple Podcasts and Google Play for sure. Maybe some others. Again, we still need to look into that. Maybe we could get this spread out to more different places soon. But then also, again, it helps us out when you respond to tweets or when you share our updates on Facebook, or when you leave us reviews on your podcast apps. Again, even if it's like one sentence, or even if it's you just clicked on the 5-star, as long as it takes your thumb to hit the screen, that helps us out a lot.
Yeah.
And again, as we are a budding newborn podcast, as much as when we have more of that on the front end, that can help us out and help people to say, hey, this is something new and new and noteworthy to listen to. And so if you like us and you like what we're doing, that really helps us out a whole lot.
Absolutely. I had a ton of fun with all of our listener suggestions. Faux show.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll keep finding out more ways to include listener input into the things that we do, because we have a lot of fun with that, and we hope that you all feel like you're able to be part of this with us.
Absolutely.
Which is also more fun.
Well, thanks for joining us again. We also enjoyed our trip to Wakanda, and if
Yes.
you're planning a trip, just remember that it's dangerous to go alone.
Take us.